Wow, everybody, it is great to be here again for another this week. And let me tell you, what a week it has been. Oh, it's so great to be here. My favorite time is definitely a Sunday afternoon because we get to meet together and we get to talk again and we get to talk about all kinds of cool stuff. We got a lot of stuff that happened last week, which we're going to cover today. We also holy banana bread. The chat has like been really active before the stream even began. So we start off with Jordan in here. Good afternoon, Candace and chat fam. Great to see you all tonight. And if you haven't already, smash that thumbs up and ring that bell for notifications. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely hit the like button because that lets everybody know that we're up and running, and it brings the folks in who are like, "Oh my God, I may have missed it." Of course, you can always catch these in the replay, so it's not a big problem if you do miss it. And we also have Crypto Larvae in the house, and Crypto Larvae is saying 3 more minutes and the financial chat begins. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, holy cow. And this was me sort of jumping in on this. Are we starting a countdown? All right. Now, let's jump into metals. Why not? Prismo Metals knocked the profits out of the park this week, even with the rough volatility. Yeah, metals, basically everything from gold to copper, well, especially copper, they did absolutely fantastic this week. It's just it's been a really strong week for materials, and that's a good thing. And I think that's going to persist. So materials is one of those sectors that I'm very, very bullish on long term. As we know, the Canadian government is putting a lot of money, especially into any of the minerals that are used in some of the EVs and other electronics of that nature. So I think we're going to see a strong materials market going forward, and that's a good thing. So I am definitely very excited about that. And Jill says hi. Hello, Jill. It is great to see you. It's great to see everybody here. So it's really hot here. It's in Ottawa. It has been hot this week. Like quite literally, yesterday we had a humididex of 24. And now when I was preparing the news for today's show, I'm looking at Manitoba and I'm seeing a blizzard and I'm like, holy banana bread. So we've got some extremes going on here. So wherever you are in the country, let me know if you're on the hot side or if you're on the cold side. Sort of like, do you remember, for those of you old enough, if you remember the old McDLTs they had at was it Burger King? No, it was at McDonald's, where you had the hot side hot and the cold side cold. Which side of that McDLT are you guys on? And Crypto says, we had a blizzard-like hurricane here in Saskatoon yesterday evening. Yeah, exactly. And I think that is what I was looking at because, it was in the prairies. So, and it's kind of the way, if you guys want me to geek out on the weather a tiny bit. So what we have is we've got a cold area in the Pacific called La Nina. We've had it the last couple of years, and now it's persisted for a third year. And this is unusual. But what it does is it causes a lot of different changes in the atmosphere. And what we're getting right now, so we're getting that jet stream coming down in the west, and then it's looping back up over the west, or over the east. So the cold Arctic air has been coming down on the west side of the country, and that hot tropical air has been sort of creeping up on the east side. So that's what we've been looking at, and it's kind of interesting. And that's exactly what Jordan is saying, that it's been warmer in the Sarnia area. And yeah, absolutely. And that's going to persist at least for a couple more days. We are starting to look at some reversal trends. And those of us on the East Coast, yeah, we're going to, well, on the east side of the country, not just the coast, we are going to see things get a little bit colder. And here we go. Oh, this is great. We got Tim Danter in the house. And I did want to point out Tim yesterday, and this is what I love. This is what I love about this community. Tim got an email in regards to Canoe and a voluntary cash redemption. So I looked it over and I went into full research mode for Tim, and it was like, holy banana bread. Yeah, they're doing that again this year. So tomorrow's video came 100% from Tim reaching out and just asking me about this cash redemption. So check that out in tomorrow's video. Entirely inspired by the Danters, particularly Tim Danter in this case. While we have Tim Danter in the house, let me point out every Wednesday, if you guys love this live stream, then you got to be over on the Dancers channel on Wednesdays, because I'm over there. Me and Tim last Wednesday, we had a fantastic conversation. We went about 2 hours, well, just shy of 2 hours. So it was great. So if you if you love this chat, head over to the Dancers, subscribe to Tim and Nancy Dancer. Just search Tim and Nancy Dancer on YouTube. It'll pull up their channel. Just give them a subscribe, and then check us out Wednesday night. I'm on that show every Wednesday night. I bring the financial part. So that is kind of a cool thing. Mary's in the house. Hello, everyone. Hello, Mary. It is great to see you. Tim saw an ad for Hamilton ETFs. Yes. If you ever watch the BNN, the Business News Network, they have a lot of commercials for Hamilton, also Horizon ETFs. So that is interesting. Yeah, absolutely. If everybody's video is glitchy, let me know, because then that means it's on my end. Otherwise, Jordan, hopefully it resolves pretty quickly for you. All right. So one of the top stories, of course, of the week is, and this is a story that hits us twice a year, it is the time change. There we go. So apparently crypto larvae had one little leg, and the video apparently is good for the Dancers. Okay, fantastic. So time change, it happens once a year. So we've just moved, of course, to standard time from daylight savings time. Do you guys think that we should be beyond this now? Do we really need to go through the turmoil of changing back and forth every year? Now, I do know that Ford had said in the past that Ontario is going to keep it until basically our big partners, for example, New York, until they get rid of it. And I know there has been talk in the US about possibly doing away with it. I'm all for doing away with it, but what do? Do we stay on standard time, or do we stay on daylight savings time? It's kind of an interesting thing. Now, I was reading the Peak earlier today, and they have claimed, and I take this one with a grain of salt because they didn't tell me who made the study, so I can't back check it. But they said that lost productivity due to poor sleep costs Canada's businesses $21.4 billion a year. Now, that seems really high. If that is the true figure, then holy banana bread, we need to start getting some better sleep. And here's that thing, that time change does not help. How many people have sort of a time lag version of jet lag for a week after the time changes? It's just ridiculous, right? Crypto says one thing we don't have to worry about time change yeah, exactly. Saskatchewan stays at the same time every year, so they don't do the time change. I think it's time that the rest of us start to think seriously about following Saskatchewan's lead on this one. So that's kind of interesting. So up next, we also have a huge story in Ontario, and that is the Ontario Education Worker Strike. And yeah, of course, you have to worry about it if you're traveling. So we got the Ontario Education Worker Strike. So we're looking at basically 55,000 were set to strike on Friday. And that's big. So what was happening is the union was looking for an 11% raise. Now they have negotiated that down to 6%, and that's as low as the union says they're willing to go. The problem is the Ontario government is saying we're only going as high as 2.5%. That's our line in the sand. So there's like, okay, we're going on strike. Now, these are not the teachers who are going on strike. These are like the support workers in the schools. So custodians and people of that nature. So, but without them, you can't have the buildings running. You can't have school. It effectively shuts the schools down. Now, the government, Rob Ford, has come in and said, okay, we're going to use this notwithstanding clause to send them back to work. If they don't go back to work, they're looking at $4,000 a day fine for everyone who doesn't go back to work. Well, the union has said, yeah, we're going to accept the $4,000 a day, and we're not going. So I don't know how if the union plans to pay for everybody, because if you're a janitor, I don't think, or a custodian, or even an office worker, as Jordan pointed out, I don't think you can afford $4,000 a day. So I'm going to assume that the union is going to be absorbing a lot of that cost, because the union has basically said, nope, we're not going back. And they've begun remote learning in Ontario now. Luckily, they had a trial run with the pandemic, so they at least know what they're doing there. So we're going to have to see how that goes. But if you think about it, before we had all of this remote learning in place, they had much more power. If they shut the schools down, everything was shut down, and that put more of an emphasis on getting things running quicker. So could it be, and what do you guys think? Do you guys think that because we now have remote learning, because we did all of this stuff with the pandemic and, remote learning, do you think that has lessened the position or the bargaining chips that this union has to try to get a quick resolution to what's going on in Ontario? So I find that just really, really interesting. So we're going to have to see how that affects things. So Jordan doesn't seem to be, and I think that's the time. And I'm also, it's like my tongue is not working, but that's fine. Let's see, it's the hours I keep. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of that whole thing. So office workers and janitors, and the schools will become just like churches. Well, you never know how this is all going to work out in the end. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this resolves itself. I know there's a controversy about whether Rob Ford is able to do this notwithstanding clause. There's some people saying he's overstepping his boundaries. So it will be interesting to see. One thing I know for sure, this will be in the news cycle next week, and we will probably be talking about this when we come around to next week once again. Good old Rob Ford. Now, a larger Canadian story this week is we had our fall economic statement. So how many of you guys were just waiting for that because of all of the miraculous stuff that was going to be in it that was going to change everything in the economy? Obviously, that wasn't the case, but there was some interesting things in there. One of the interesting things is they're looking to add a 2% tax on buybacks. So we're talking about stock buybacks. So if a company decides, we're going to buy back 10% of our shares, then they would pay 2% on those shares in taxes to the government. So it's kind of a way to say, instead of buying back your shares and making your numbers look better, why don't you invest it in Canadians? Why don't you hire more people? Why don't you, just bring on more investments in Canada per se? So that'll be interesting to see how that's going to work out. I think one of the things is if this begins in 2024, if they do not have a clause in there that backdates it to, and I don't think they will, I think anybody who's even remotely Canadian company-wise thinking of doing share buybacks are probably going to do them sooner than later so that they can avoid paying these taxes. So that'll be something to pay attention to, because maybe your favorite stocks will be doing some buybacks. And that might be, well, as an investor, that may be an opportunity for you. So that's going to be interesting, I think. All right, we got a few more people in here. Paul Santori. Hi, Candace. Great channel. Love the Canadian content and perspective. Thank you, Paul. It is always fantastic to see you. Now, I did miss Jordan. He said I wake up between 11 and 1 and go to sleep 12 and 2. Holy banana bread, Jordan. You're like a vampire. And the friggin' Oracle says, like meta characters not having legs and feet. And I can't wait for USD to come down. I remember parity. Yeah, I remember parity. We had that briefly. The US dollar cannot soar forever. So that's one of those things. Keep that in mind. Right now, it is doing really, really strong. And here's that thing. When the US dollar loses steam eventually and begins to come back down, that's going to really, really drive up the prices of anything based in US dollars. So that would be, I'll give you two good examples, oil and Bitcoin, or crypto in general. So you'll definitely see some things there. That'll be your opportunity to, if you're looking for a buy-in to get into something like oil, or if you're looking to get into Bitcoin, that may be where you might want to get in, because you might be able to even turn some quick profits, even if you ride the dollar up as the dollar falls and then sell. Or if you're looking for a long term, then obviously stay in, and that would be a good place to begin. All right, that's kind of cool. Can anyone explain why Japan has been flat for 3 decades? That's a good question. I don't have an answer on that, Vic. I remember I read something about it at one point, but you know what? I'm going to look into that for you, Vic, and we'll ask me that again next week, and I'll have an answer for you. That sounds fun. So next week, Japan will be one of our topics, or at least the Japanese economy. All right, so back to, of course, our fall economic statement. Another big point in it is that they were looking at some inflation support. So one of the supports that they're looking at is with students. They want to remove the federal interest off of student loans. So that's fantastic. It doesn't help you, though, with the provincial and the fact that tuitions are still very expensive. It is really expensive in Canada to get an education. If you want to get a degree, unless you're super smart enough to get scholarships, or you happen to fit the profile of certain bursaries, you're going to be looking at piling up a lot of debt. And that's not the best way to end, coming out of university with a big ton of debt. And then hope that whatever it is that you took has jobs. In a sense, you're almost better off today if you want a high-paying job of going through a trade school, because a lot of the trades right now are in very high demand. So it's kind of interesting. It's almost reversed. It used to be before that, when you go to trade school and get a half-decent job, or you can go to university and get a great job. Now it's almost reversed, which is really, really interesting. Crypto Larvae says BTCY or ETHY, make the profits. It's about to come. Yeah, absolutely. Those are two ETFs. They use, both of them will actually use, my mind has just gone completely blank, covered calls. They both use covered calls to make a little bit of extra income. So even when Bitcoin and Ethereum are falling, that helps them maintain their insanely high dividends. And they do pay really high dividends, although those dividends do fluctuate a little bit, because if they don't make enough money doing the covered calls, they will cut that dividend a little bit. So you may find some months the dividend's a little bit lower, and sometimes it'll rebound. They're still paying you more than most dividend stocks out there. So, and once that US dollar starts to fall and Bitcoin starts going up, holy banana bread, those things are going to fly, and those are going to be some really nice stocks. Right now is a great time to get in there for sure. All right, let's see. Not true, Vic. Mount Fuji is very high. It's funny, that actually went through my mind when he asked why they were flat. And I was going to mention there was a lot of volcanoes there, but I decided not to. And let's see here. Picked up some Google. Yeah, absolutely. I think Google, for American stocks, Google right now is at an insanely good price. I have full confidence in Google. When you think about Google, the fact that, well, heck, I'm on YouTube, and YouTube is part of Google. So I definitely have a lot of faith in them. Otherwise, I would be looking at other platforms. So I am good. Oh, thank God. I was so worried that you weren't going to be here, Brian. So Brian is here. Now the real stream can begin. Awesome. And we got Scott from Create, Save, and Invest. So me and Scott are going to be doing a collab soon. We're going to do basically we're going to actually just talk about YouTube over on his channel. Scott is one of these guys. I like to think of him sort of as just the most chill guy that you can watch. He usually talks about his portfolio, what he's doing. He has a live stream most mornings, so definitely check out Create, Save, Invest. Maybe throw him up a quick sub and watch a couple of his live streams. And definitely, I'll promote it like all banana bread when I'm going to be on his stream, so that you guys can come over and check that out, because we're going to be talking about how to succeed on YouTube. So if you've ever been interested in YouTube, that will be the stream to watch for sure. And interesting enough, before I jump over to Bonnie, my deep dive on Thursday is diversified. My royalty. It's a DIV, which is diversified royalty. They came off his stream. Somebody on his stream when I was over there in the chat was like, going on about div, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to do a deep dive on div. So sometimes you just never know where they come from. So hopefully they followed over to this channel, because then they can see the deep dive that they kind of unofficially requested. All right, and we got Bonnie in the house. Hi, Bonnie. Vic has a collection of CDRs like AAPL, MSFT, GOOG, AMZN, and others, but all down, bought at the wrong time. Well, keep in mind, technology is in pain, but it will recover. A lot of these are blue chip companies that are going, they're not going to go away. Like, I don't see a company like Microsoft or Amazon going out of business. I see them struggling for a little bit. But on the other side of the bear market, those are the companies that will really start piling back in. I can't guarantee you 1,000,000% that one of them won't fail. Anything can happen. But if any of the tech companies had to fail, I would almost bet on Meta. And even I don't think they will fail. I actually think they're at a really good price right now. So I'm pretty good with that. Vic is talking to Scott saying, I'll make a channel, copy, spend, divest. That would be funny. That would be funny, Vic. I would check out your channel for sure. All right, so that was the inflation support. Another thing from the fall economic is they are doing a clean tech tax credit. So basically 20 to 30% of your capital will be covered if you're designing something that is green. That's kind of their whole, I guess it's all part of the fighting climate change aspect. The other big thing in the fall economic was, of course, the doubling of their GST. That everybody should have received that already. So, hopefully, if you get GST, you got your GST on Friday. So, unfortunately, though, it's not. It's really interesting. Unfortunately, it's not a lot. I think there was another interview that Christia, I can never say her name, Freeland. Anyway, there was another interview that she did a couple of nights, maybe last night or the night before. I saw the video about it over on Russell Matthews' channel. So if you want more details on this, just check out Russell's channel because he did a really good job. I'm just going to very, very quickly scratch the surface. Basically, she said that with Canadians having a whole bunch of tightening and how bad the economy is, that people should just cancel their Disney Plus. And I'm like, what? What do you mean cancel your Disney Plus? I like Disney Plus. If I'm going to cancel anything, it would probably be Netflix, at least until the next Stranger Things comes along. And then she went on to say that the Canadian government has, they did some soul searching of their own, and they managed to find $3.8 billion that they could cut in spending. Well, when you dig a little deeper, and Russell really breaks this down well, but it turns out that a lot of that $3.8 billion is just money that wasn't used up in supports, because where they made the supports really hard to get, a lot of people didn't qualify. So they had earmarked it as though all of the normal folks were going to qualify, but then they made it hard for people to qualify. So that is just amazing. And here's the interesting thing. Scott says she actually said that is so out of touch. It absolutely is. When you consider how much she makes, and her husband has a good job, so probably between the two of them, I would bet they're making at least $300,000 a year, and they're at the point that they need to be, canceling their Disney Plus. That's if that's true, and I don't believe it is. I think she was just talking, and trying to make herself feel like she's connecting to everybody else, to all of the normal people. If that were true, then we're really in deep caca. If people making $300,000 a year are looking at cutting Disney Plus to save some dollars, that would definitely be absolutely ridiculous. So that's kind of how I look at that. All right, the fall economic statement. I think we're going to get a winter. I don't know if we get four. I think we get a winter one eventually too. It's one of these interesting things. Since they've been doing these economic statements, it's like they're always so disappointing. And I don't know if this happens with every government. After the Liberals are finally done their run, it'll be interesting to see the first one that comes out from the Conservatives or whoever takes their place, just to see if they're maybe a little bit more meaningful. But lately, they feel pretty, just not that meaningful, to be honest. All right. Next big thing. It is finally here. This week, we have the U.S. midterm elections. So things are looking right now. They're saying it's about a 55% chance that the Republicans are going to uh, take control of the House after these elections. So we'll still have to see. The elections, of course, are on Tuesday, which is kind of interesting. Fun little trivia: there was a band called Arcadia, which was technically it was a splinter off of Duran Duran. So I think Simon Le Bon of Duran Duran and a couple others, they made this small little band. And they made, I think, one single. And they had one hit, well, sort of a one-hit wonder, which was called Election Day, which they released on Election Day in November in the US, because I thought that was just kind of funny. But anyway, that's kind of one of those interesting things. So what exactly does it mean as investors? It's one of these interesting things when you try to judge how the American election is going to affect the markets. In a way, you're almost using your emotions to sort of determine how that's going to happen. So that doesn't always work that well. However, this year we do have this one thing. We have the whole oil and the U.S. reserves. So Biden, of course, has been trying to cut the price of gas by, well, releasing oil out of these U.S. reserves. By doing that, and he has released a lot of oil in those U.S. reserves. Actually, a frightening amount of oil has come out of those reserves. Now, that, of course, was to make people a little bit more amenable to voting Democrat. So once this election is finished, there's no need for him to continue doing that. I think, and this is my opinion, I believe he's going to stop doing it. And I think he's going to be looking at starting to replenish some of those reserves, starting to build them back up. So what that means is it basically amounts to a cut in the production of oil. So you could see definitely a resurgence in the price of oil over the second half of November into December. So it'll be very interesting to see how this works out. Now, if he decides to do something that nobody's expecting and keeps on pulling out of the reserves, then yeah, it's not going to happen. But I think it will. I think we're going to see some really interesting stuff here. Let's see. Jordan says people like Christia F don't know what it's really like to live a low income life. Cut out Disney Plus. How about we can't afford it to begin with? Yeah, in some cases, there's a lot of people that can't afford, Disney Plus or Netflix or anything like that. And it's true. And the thing is, when you look at inflation getting out of control, and we're going to talk a little bit more about inflation a little bit later, it's set up in a point that a lot of people on the low income side of the spectrum are really, really going to be feeling this a lot more than the rest of us. It's going to be difficult when you have a situation, like try to put yourself in the spot where you have a situation where you're almost at the point where you're saying, okay, do I keep the family warm this winter or do I keep them fed? And you can't do both. We've got people who are in that situation. So absolutely, I feel for anybody in that situation. And hopefully, at least I'm hoping we don't have a really bad winter. I'd like to see a milder winter than normal, just to sort of help people not have to use as much energy to heat their homes, because that would definitely be a good thing. Jordan says, we cut out food. That's our pinch pennies option. So yeah, sometimes people do that. Some people do, they cut out the food, or not even that, if they're cutting out the food, they're also not eating healthy food. So all of a sudden, it's like, what's for supper tonight? Craft dinner. Oh, didn't we have that the last 16 nights in a row? That's the type of thing that does happen. And sometimes it's like, some people will still eat, but they're just not going to be eating very healthy. And what's that, of course, going to do? If you think about it long term, that's not going to be good for our health care, because these are people who are going to be getting sick. These are people who are going to be requiring, whether they have heart attacks or whether other health issues, that's going to be eating into money that we're all paying for. So, I think we need a better solution, I think, than just putting people in that situation where they have to choose between heat and food. Okay, let's see. If you're investing into cryptocurrency, following the American news is a grand idea. Yeah, absolutely. For those crypto folk, we'll leave this up here while we talk about it. That's where the recovery from crypto is going to come. So the big thing is regulation. and I've preached this many, many times. Once we get regulation on crypto, particularly Bitcoin, I imagine you might even see regulation on some of the stable coins first. But once we see regulation on crypto, that's going to start to change the game a little bit. That is going to open up the doors to institutional investors. Now, when is this going to come? I don't know. I don't have an answer. I know that there are bipartisan efforts in place to start sort of thinking about it. So hopefully soon, because I think it would be a beautiful thing to see that side of investment pick back up and have people excited again about Bitcoin. Buy XEG. Yeah, I love XEG. That's a fantastic ETF. And those of you who didn't see, I did a deep dive on that on Thursday. So you might want to take a look at that and then decide whether you want to buy that ETF or not. It's up to you guys, of course. Always do your due diligence. Buying food at the dollar store. Yeah. It's one of those things. It's like you could buy, let's say, a Twix bar. You could buy it at a regular store, and then if you buy it at the dollar store, I don't know. It's almost like it's a similar. It looks like a Twix bar, but it just doesn't taste the same. Not that you should be eating Twix bars as a balanced meal or anything or any sort. But yeah, sometimes I'm very hesitant about some of the dollar store food. I think the dollar store is fantastic for all of those things like decorations and just, all the cheap things that you need for your house. But I don't think I would want to be feeding my family from the dollar store personally. Now, that's my opinion. Let us enlighten. A 2-adult family on ODSP takes in $22,000 per year. I'd like to see Christia and her hubby live off that. Keep the poor and broken under your thumb. And that's an insane, when you look at that number, $22,000 a year for 2 adults. So I imagine it's just 2 adults. Throw in a pet and you're really in trouble. But $22,000 a year is not very much money. It's one of those situations like you have a lot of people, like even if you look at rent, it's very just to survive on $22K a year, rent would take up most of that. For most places, and rent's only been going up. So I imagine, and that's why I think a lot of people who are in situations like that end up having to, live with a whole bunch of people just so that they can try to get that rent under control. So yeah, that's not a good situation, Jordan. I definitely feel for you. Now Vic says mostly nickel dime crew here trying to get a leg up. Yeah, and that's kind of the whole thing, right? We want to get a leg up. We want to be able to, as investors, we all want to succeed. And that's kind of the whole thing. Like what I love about this community is this is an opportunity for all of us to come together and provide, well, one, a little bit of encouragement. It's like, hang in there, Jordan, you're doing good. You will, you'll get through this. Or just sharing information. Like, somebody comes in and says, hey, somebody like Scott saying, buy XEG. Well, yeah, that's a fantastic little stock. Some of you may go look at it and you'll be like, oh my God, look at this. Look at what this stock is doing. This needs to be in my portfolio. And you make some money from it. That's kind of what things are what the whole community is about. And it's not just, because we talk about nickel and dime crew. There is a lot of the nickel and dime crew here, but a lot of this community as well is outside of that original community that started over on High Rye and moved to the Danters. I would say probably about half, maybe half of you guys are from that original crew. The other half are all brand new, and you guys are just, I guess we call you mountaineers. I don't know why, but that's apparently the name. Somebody in one of the chats decided that was the name, so I'm like, oh, okay. That actually sounds better than calling everybody banana bread heads, which I just didn't want to do. And Jordan mentions as well his rent. So $14,000 under the $22,000. So that's just insane. Like that leaves $8,000 for everything else. So you take because that rent probably doesn't include electricity, internet. You can't survive today without internet. So it's just one of those things. And Dave says, we will make it through. I've had to sell 4 kilograms of silver throughout the past 3 years. it's taken a big bite from our precious metals retirement. Yeah, and that's one of those things. It's one of the things about the current, bear market or the recession that's coming is a lot of people are going to have to start biting into their retirement. And if you're one of these people who is getting closer to retirement and all of a sudden you have to start pulling it back to survive now, you could be like, maybe you were sitting 5 years from retirement and all of a sudden you're watching as you're pulling it out. 5 years. Oh, it's now 10 years to retirement. Thank you, economy. That can happen. And I feel bad that is a reality for some people, but it really is. The only thing you can try to do is at least you guys have the legs up. You guys know about investing. You guys know about emergency funds. You guys know about frivolous spending and, a little bit about saving. And that helps unless you just don't have. Like if you talk about a nickel and dime crew, if, at the end of every month you're in the hole, you don't even have nickels or dimes to really do anything. All you can really do is kind of bandage things and try to hold things together until you get to the other side of this economy. And what is it going to look like? Right now we've got a situation where inflation is just completely, it's devastating. It keeps on growing and growing. And we're at a point too, and we're going to talk a little bit about the jobs. We last month added 108,000 jobs. That's a lot. They were anticipating 10,000. It's 108,000. So that's one of these situations where if you talk about that wage inflation spiral where things get out of control, that's the type of thing we would see when that starts to happen. Right now, the Bank of Canada is looking at those job numbers and they're going, oh, crud. Because I'll tell you, it's not a good situation if the jobs don't start coming down, because they're at that point where they are going to simply be looking at, raising rates much higher than what anybody can afford. And a lot of people right now can't even afford where the rates are at right now. And we're looking at them continuing to rise. So that's one of those things to look at. And we got Dave D in the house, OG here. Hey, Dave, it's fantastic to see you. And here we are. I love this. Keep Disney, cancel Freeland. Absolutely. I love my Disney Plus. And Jordan says, we always say, if you really want to know how to stretch a nickel, live with somebody on ODSP for the last week of a month. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is one of these things. And I've said this before. If you have a disability and you're not able to work, they should be giving you a living wage. It's not fair that they don't. I'm very pro advocate of that when it comes to people who are unable to work, and that's the only reason they're not working. If they had the ability to work and if they could fit into a proper environment, then they'd probably be doing it, because nobody wants to be making like what Jordan's making, for example, what his family is going through. Nobody wants that. Everybody would rather, I think, be making more money than, going through undue hardships. So next up, we got rate hikes. And so the U.S. Fed had their meeting and they went with another 75 basis points. And this is the fourth time in a row that they've done 75 basis points. So they're being pretty aggressive down there. One of the things that Jerome Powell said is, he said, it is very premature to be thinking about pausing. And that's an interesting word. It's premature to think about it. It means that he is willing to the Fed, at least in the US, is willing to do whatever it takes. And here's the thing. Canada is now looking at them and thinking, after these job numbers, maybe we should have went with a 75 again. But, we'll have to see how this is going to work out. And it's going to be really interesting. Now, the U.S. also had the same jobs issue, too, as what we had. So the U.S., they added 239,000 jobs. And interesting thing, though, and I think I don't have the number for Canada, but I do have it for the U.S. So in the last year, the wages in the U.S. are up 7.7%. So I don't know how much we are up, but it is something I think that's happening. I think wages are going up. I would imagine we're not as high as the U.S., unfortunately, because, when you look at things like, well, like that whole strike going on with the support workers for education, if they had had 7.7%, they probably wouldn't be striking. So I don't think that we've been seeing the same thing over here. Now, Jordan has come back and says, what's disheartening is when we hear of this and that handout for everyone else. And through all of this, never any speck of help or raise for us. It kind of hurts like we don't matter or exist. Yeah. And that was one of those things with the pandemic and with the supports that went out. The supports went out to workers. If you were somebody who was on ODSP, or if you were, a struggling mom on welfare, you weren't getting any of all of this bonus money. Whereas minimum wage workers were all of a sudden with the CERB, were all of a sudden making more money than when they were working. So obviously that's one of the reasons that a lot of them didn't want to go back to work. It's like, I'm making more money sitting at home right now. And you can't blame them, really, if you think about it. All of a sudden, they're ordering the stuff off of Amazon that they couldn't get before. Hence the reason Amazon became so busy during the pandemic. So this is just something that does keep on going and going. Now, with the rate hikes as well, we talked about the US, the UK. So over in the United Kingdom, they also did a 75 basis point rate hike. And that's the highest rate hike they've done in the UK since all the way back in 1989. So think about that. That's a long time. Now, the Bank of England, they've actually put out a warning. They're saying that they are expecting a recession, and they're expecting it to be the longest recession in England's history. So those are some pretty strong words, and things are worse in Europe than they are in Canada or the United States for that matter. Canada right now, we do have, this is one of these unique things, a lot of the shortages in the world, Canada has a lot of it, like, everything from fertilizer to food to oil. And that's going to help us, I think, in the long term. At least it's going to help minimize some of the pain. Whereas you take Europe, I think, is going to really have a rough winter. I don't know if anybody from Europe is here. I doubt it. But if you are, you certainly have my sympathies. Which is fantastic. So what do we got looking at the market this week coming up? So this week coming up, we do have one major catalyst coming up, and that is CPI data in the US is going to be coming up. And if that makes it look like inflation is not starting to come back down, we're definitely probably going to see a red market after that. It won't be one of these situations where it'll just go tank and stay tanked for a long time, but we're definitely going to see, a red day, maybe red day and a half. It's hard to say. Sometimes it's kind of interesting because sometimes that market will go red and then it'll jump right back green again. So it's interesting. I did a poll just to see what you guys thought about November, whether it be red or green. And for the first day after I did this poll on the community tab, it was looking like green was going to win, but those of you, the Bears came back in and they've edged ahead. So I think now it's like something like 53 to 47% for red. So it'll be interesting to see if that's how it turns out. I don't get to vote in that, but if I had to vote, I probably would go red. Probably just a little bit, but I think December is going to be green. I'm very hopeful that we get a Santa Claus rally this year, which would be fantastic. Just at least a nice way. And I'd also really, really like, I don't think this is going to happen, but I'd like to see there be no rate hikes in December. Just a little something. Give people a little tiny bit of hope, at least for the year's end, for the holidays, whatever holidays, everybody likes or celebrates, or even if you don't celebrate any holidays, year end's hope is not bad nonetheless. Now we've got some earnings reports coming out this week too, and some of them are pretty interesting. Canada, one of them is actually Disney. Take that, Freeland. Yeah, Disney and AMC are two of the bigger ones in the US that have earnings reports coming out this week. I doubt that Christia Freeland's comment is going to hurt Disney's earnings call. Now in Canada, there's a lot of big names that have earnings calls coming out this week. Pizza, Greenland Renewables, or Green Lane Renewables, Killam Apartment REITs, Brookfield Asset Management, Boston Pizza Royalties, Cineplex. It'll be interesting to see how they're doing. Canadian Tire, one of my favorites, Timber Creek Financial, also Manulife Financial, another one of my favorites. Algonquin Power and Utilities is coming out this week. And of course, Sienna Senior Living, which I recently did a deep dive on. So it'll be interesting to see how they're doing. So that, yeah, it's going to be an interesting week, I think. So are you guys interested in any of those guys? Do you have any, I guess, money in the game when it comes to some of those? Because, those I think are pretty darn, pretty good list. I think as well, I'm not sure when Rogers and Shaw's was to come out. One piece of information told me it was going to come out this week. So it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing both Rogers and Shaw because every time it looks like they've got everything under control when it comes to their merger, then more stuff gets thrown in the way. So we're now kind of at that point where we're just kind of waiting to see, is this going to happen? What else is going to get thrown in the way? Now Scott here mentions as well that he's waiting for Green Lane Renewables. And Joe says Manulife is a larger position of mine. Yeah, Manulife is fantastic. Well, Manulife is one of the three big insurance people in Canada, so they are huge, and I think they're going to do well because I think right now a few sectors that are doing well, your energy sectors, also your your health sectors, which is really interesting, and financial to a little bit. Now the banks I know have been struggling, and a lot of that is, as I said last week, they are dealing with people who are reneging on their debts. And okay, now we've got some argument coming out here. Not argument, we got disagreement. So Jill says, as a disabled person, I strongly disagree with Jordan's perspective, but I don't want to get an argument. Okay, so it's not an argument. And that's a thing. It really comes down to, I think, as a non-disabled person, I feel like I shouldn't even have a voice when it comes to this. I just would like to see. I just don't like to see people in poverty. That's what it boils down to for me. Yeah, I'm going to step back from that one now. I'll let you two fight it out in the comments if you want to. But excuse me, that is fine. Oh, I'm going to have a quick sip here. All right, so we're coming up to about 13 minutes left. I've finished with the news. So if you guys got some questions, let's start hitting them up, and we'll nail that, and we'll just talk about. I still need to get a thing, and I also want to talk. I guess something I want to talk about here. Now I made a thing here. Let me just check a look here. There we go. So this is my little banner for memberships. So I'm actually looking at how I can reward people who want to support the channel through a channel membership. Now, I'm looking to do some exclusive content, some behind the scenes type stuff, but at the same time, it is very important to me that nobody who, especially in struggling times like this, I mean, I think a membership is like $2.99 a month or something. So that's, people can't afford that. So I'm never going to withhold any content from anyone. So what I'm looking at is just doing things that are more different. So for example, one of the things I posted the other day for channel members was my cat's Halloween costume. Yeah, there we go. She dressed as a shark of all things. But what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to find ways to add some content that doesn't take away from the main channel. So I was almost thinking, here was an idea I had, and tell me if you guys think this would be a good idea. One of the things I was thinking is when I make a video is maybe have a second camera going, sort of filming me making the video, and then putting that up as like it's almost like the making of. So for example, let's say on the DIV deep dive I'm doing on Thursday, if I recorded me making it, and then made a quick little video about the behind the scenes of making it. That's kind of what I was thinking as possible type content. But this will be something that once we have some folks on the channel, I'm going to listen to the channel members and it'll be like, whatever you guys want, that's what we're going to do. But I do want to, it is important to me that I don't want people to feel like, if you can't afford a channel membership or you're not, that's just not something for you. I don't want people to be in a situation where they feel like they're going to miss out on content, because this is a family. This is a community. You guys are not going to miss out on content. I am never going to ever, ever, ever turn chat into a, members only type chat. I'm not going to do that because I want to, if you're subscribed to this channel, as far as I'm concerned, you are a member. That's cool to me. If I ever get to a point where I start getting a lot of people showing up on these streams that are, trolls or things like that, or, coming and saying some pretty vile stuff in chat, I'll then probably turn subscriber mode on at that point. But I haven't done that yet because because you guys are fantastic. Nobody has really shown up here. I remember, last year, I think I got a couple trolls that popped up, more or less, those ones that just sort of like ad bot type things that I just deleted right away. So I think that would be kind of cool. All right. Anyway, let me turn that thing off. That's annoying. Whoops. All right. There we go. Bye-bye, banner. All right. So that's what I was thinking about with that. As always, I'm going to sort of follow the direction that you guys want to a certain extent. I mean, I still have to make the end decision on different things, but you guys are all rock. All right, let's take a look here. We got Dave. Dave says, if you were getting a mortgage right now, would you choose a fixed rate? So I'm starting at 5.49 fixed or a 5.0 variable, 5-year Canadian. I understand no crystal ball, and just your opinion. That's a really good question, Dave. Really, really good question, because I know I know things are going to go up still. So if you've got a fixed rate, initially you're probably going to be okay. Depends on how long you are. Here's what I would, and you're talking about 5 years. I imagine within 5 years, though, that we're going to see things start to ease up. Probably, I would say by about 2024. And once again, no crystal ball. If this whole wage spiral thing happens, that could really mess things up even worse. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Now, do you want to go with a fixed or a variable? Variable means that you're just going to be at the mercy of whatever the rate is. But I think right now, if it was me, I would probably lean towards that variable and be prepared to pay through the teeth for the next year or so. And then with the hopes that overall, when they do start loosening things up, that I'm going to pay a little bit less. But that is me, and I could so be wrong on that one. At least with the fixed, you do know exactly what to expect. Now, no brainer, if you had done this a long time ago, then that might have been an option. All right. And short-term fixed. Yeah, so, okay, so there's Scott. Scott's thinking short-term fixed. And you know what? And that's the thing. I'm torn between the two, to be very honest. I really trust Scott's opinion, though, so I would seriously think that as well. And let's see. I think the 3-year fixed would be 589. Is that what you were thinking? Create, save, invest. Okay. So that's interesting. So if you can get, and here's this other thing too. If you're going to go with a fixed, with a 589 fixed 3 years, you should have a lower rate on the other side of that. So that might be an option as well. I think that's kind of where Scott's thinking maybe. But now here's the thing too. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think. Well, let me just see. Situation going into, okay, so this is more about that disability stuff. We're going to leave that alone. All right, so Scott says yields are inverting, so shorter terms more than the 5-year. I think rates are going to be going down in 2023. A 1 or 2 year make more sense. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was getting at, is that if you can get a nice short term, then you're fine, because you are going to get some rates that are going to, once we get past, I'd say 2023 should be bad. I think 2024 is when we're going to see ourselves rounding that corner. So I think once you get through that, that would be I think a better option. And here's Jillo. 589 isn't terrible. I'm curious what the variable rate would be. That's a good question. I mean, 5.0 is better, and I'm surprised that the variable rate would be lower at this point, because prime is 4.7 in Canada. And then Dave says, I appreciate thoughts. I'm torn right now as well. I can afford the fixed in either case, but my brain panics when I think about an 80s Volcker move. Yes. I don't think we will see a Volcker move. I don't think the economy can handle a Volcker move. But I think what you could see is, you could see, at least in Canada, going from 50 back to 75 if things continue to stay really high when it comes to the jobs being added. So it'll be very interesting, but I don't think you're going to see a Volcker move. I would hope not. So yikes. Now I know that there is Meet Kevin down in the US, and he's always going on about Paul Volcker, and and Powell coming in with a Volcker move, but it's not going to happen. And exactly what Scott says, we have a Volcker move, and we're all Volckered or wrecked. So let's hope that doesn't happen. All right, we got a few minutes left, so whatever you guys want to talk about, throw it out there. Before we move towards Monday. Now, what I got coming up in the week, as I said, tomorrow is another canoe video. We're going to be talking about Canoe's annual voluntary cash redemption. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. If you don't know what that is, then you definitely want to check that out. Deep dive coming up on Thursday on DIV. So we'll have to take a look at them. DIV, I think, is one of these stocks that most people don't realize is there. It's a nice high div, cheap stock that has, they hold a lot of royalties. They have a lot of royalties, including, I believe, Mr. Lube. So they are a nice little gem when it comes in my portfolio, and I definitely do like them a lot. So we'll check them out, and this time we're going to go with the math, because I do love digging in, and it's funny. I'll give you guys an idea. When I do a deep dive, as I'm writing the script for it, I write everything up to the point where I say, let's check out the numbers. I don't look at the numbers before I do that, because I want to write it so that I don't know what the numbers are going to be yet until I actually get into it. And even when I'm doing it, when I get to the debt part, I don't know if they're going to be insanely in debt, unless I've heard it through other means, but I don't know how bad it's going to be, because I want it to be, I kind of am going for genuine, when something surprises me and I'm like, holy banana bread, that's a legitimate holy banana bread. Look at this number. I did not know it was this good, or I did not know it was that bad. So I kind of do it that way. Just kind of part of the whole process. All right. And Scott says, Dave, I'll try to get my buddy Rob on one of my live streams this week to talk mortgage rates. There we go. So Dave, definitely check out Create, Save, Invest. Throw him up, subscribe, and see, because if you can get Rob on. I also want to, I have a future video planned. I'm going to be talking about, now it's not mortgage per se, but I am going to be talking about some of the term rates when it comes to GIC and bonds. And we're going to look at them, and we're going to look at some of the inversions in them and how they may or may not be pointing towards a recession. Spoiler warning, they probably are pointing towards a recession. But I think that would be kind of cool. So that's on my list. It's on my short list. I keep a whiteboard where I just write down ideas. So that's going to be, you know what? That probably should be this Saturday. It might be this Saturday. I'm just putting that out there. Now, next Monday, we'll come back with another list, because where I wanted to get this canoe one out because it was timely. It took over the list spot this week. So we'll definitely see a list coming out next week. And Dave once again says that's awesome. And it is. I think it's a really good topic. And as he says, I'm sure it's a popular topic at the moment. So yeah. And that's kind of things. A lot of people were really lucky who were able to sign in for a very long fixed rate at the beginning, in the pandemic when rates were as close to zero as we'll ever get them. I think the friggin' Oracle actually signed in at a really good rate for, I don't know if it was 5 or 10 years, but I think it was 5 years. So some people did really well. Anyway, that's about it. So we're coming up here on the end. We've done our hour. You guys have all been fantastic. You guys had a lot of questions. There's been a lot of energy in chat. I love it. So keep on coming. Keep on doing this, guys. This is fantastic. Also, keep in mind, if you are interested in becoming a channel member, do that right away and let me know what you want to see as your exclusive content, because I'm putting some stuff together right now. I got my first channel member already, so I'm just pulling in a few more, and we'll get that all going for you guys. And I guess, does somebody want to say goodnight to everybody? Because it'd be kind of cool to end it on that. Now, Dave just said, I started dipping my toe into PLC if anyone is into the death industry. I'll tell you, anything that involves end of life, that's going to be a massive industry. The baby boomers are getting older. Death rates will be going up. As morbid as that sounds, it's just a reality. Don't look at it with emotion. Look at it as an investor. There is money to be made in healthcare, support homes. I know I did that. I did that deep dive on Sienna, and Sienna was, I wasn't super kind to them, but that was just looking at the numbers. You also have to keep in mind that Sienna SIA, they also have government support. So, that's going to keep them afloat no matter what happens. And I think as well, as you get more towards the end of life, a lot of these homes that have government support behind them, as well as the ones that don't, I think they're going to start turning some good profits in the future. So not something to shy away from. And Canna Bus Driver says, thanks, Candace. Great show. Good to see you, Canna. I love the lurkers as well as the talkers. And good night. Thanks for the stream. Thumbs up. Tim, you get the comment of the night. Here it is, everybody. It's been fantastic. Enjoy the rest of your night. Have a fantastic week. Get used to the new time, except for the folks in, of course, Saskatchewan. Anyway, it has been fantastic. Have a fantastic night, everybody. We'll see you again.